Salutations readers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nkechi and today I'm gonna give y'all a dedicated reading vlog of Evocation by S.T. Gibson. So, I was thankfully, graciously gifted, well, not gifted, but really like given a physical arc of Evocation by S.T. Gibson. I've had this arc since October, November-ish, and it's literally May, and I have not started reading it. And I'm like, this book literally comes out the end of the month. I need to actually start reading it so that I can have a review out. I am indeed very much curious about Evocation. The only thing I know about this book is that, well, we're doing with the occult. It has a V-shaped polyamorous thing going on here. We're following David, who is, what is David? David, who's pretty much very much knowledgeable on the occult, but he has to, because it's some sort of like a family curse, I think, that he needs to break. So we get to see his ex-boyfriend sorcerer named Reese, and we also get to meet Reese's astrologer wife Moira. As far as the plot, I also know that this is a queer urban fantasy romance series. This is the first book in a series. The thing that really got me interested in the pick to request a arc of this is that the fact that we're dealing with the occult, it's polyamorous, it's queer, so yeah, that's all I really know, and that's all I really need to know. And it's not very long. It's about 300-ish pages. So very much looking forward to finally starting Evocation. But yeah, I am very much looking forward to seeing my thoughts on, seeing where I land with Evocation. Because I have seen some praise, but I've also seen some people not really loving it. But I do remember S.T. Gibson saying that David is pretty much alpha hole. So we're definitely going to be dealing with a pretty unlikable protagonist. But to the looks of it, it looks like it's multi-POV. We have perspective chapters from David, Reese, and Moira, but for the most part, this is indeed David's book. That's pretty much all my thoughts. I mean, that's all what I really know about Evocation, but I do hope to update y'all pretty soon. I don't know how often I'll update for this vlog, but very much looking forward to just starting the book. Anyways, talk to you all later. Alright, salutations y'all. I'm here to give y'all my first official update on Evocation by S.T. Gibson. So I also want to show y'all though that in the past, I think sometime last week, I actually got my copy from Aardvark Book Club of Evocation. So this is the final finished copy, of course, though, but it is Aardvark Book Club logoed right there. So it's actually really cool, actually, to see the finished copy versus like my ARC copy. And I just want to make a note of this. Just wanna put this out there for the peoples. I just want to let y'all know that if you get a finished copy of Evocation, it actually shows, at least in the back, the names of the titles of the next books in the series. And in fact, even tells you which characters is going to be like the main focus in each book. Because one thing I did know about this series is that each book focuses on particular characters. I mean, of course, we have these other characters in the story, but like each book is like particular character's story. So Evocation is really focusing on David. So David will have more screen time versus like other characters, and then the other characters will get their own books. So let's talk about Evocation. So I made it to page 102, so that's the first 12 chapters, and I actually do have a bookmark of the Hanged Man because of course I do. So this is from my Tarot of the Divine tarot card deck. So the person here that's literally sleeping here, that's like in the Hanged Man position, is Sleeping Beauty. So yes, do recommend though this tarot card deck if any of y'all are interested in. But yeah, this is my bookmark because of course, I mean, if you look here, David here is literally looking like the Hangman card, like obviously. So it was must. But anyways, yes, my full thoughts on Evocation so far, the first 100 pages or so. I will say this much. Writing style wise, which I already knew going in and from hearing from other reviews, is that the writing style is a lot more straightforward. So if you're used to seeing Gibson's writing in like A Diary of Blood or even in Education and Malice, it's not really like that. It's a different style of writing that I can see why for fans of A Diary of Blood, I can see how they'd be very disappointed. And this book focuses more on a character that is pretty unlikable, not gonna lie, which is very, very frustrating. Like we're talking about like a privileged white man who's pretty much an asshole without really realizing that he says pretty asshole things. I'm like, how do you not Anyways, so yeah, that's practically David in a nutshell. So yeah, David is pretty much unlikable. However, I do feel a little bit sympathetic to him as well, because he's also a recovering alcoholic. He's also been cursed. But so far, really, the saving grace for me to even continue on with this book really is Moira. Rhys and Moira, though, I'm just like, okay. Definitely more so Moira than Rhys, but I've been kind of liking Rhys. I'm like, okay, Rhys is a character that I can easily sympathize with. I don't particularly love him. He's not like my favorite out of the three characters we're following with the perspectives, because we do get three perspectives as David, Rhys, and Moira, but David more so since this is David's book, but we do have perspective chapters in Rhys and Moira's perspectives, and I definitely am more interested in Moira than Rhys. Even though Rhys is not badly written at all, I think he's pretty much well written and stuff. It's just that I can see, I don't know, it's just interesting because this book, sure, the plot is like trying to figure out this curse thing that David happens upon, and how Rhys, they were boyfriends beforehand, and then he got married to Moira, but then they had like a falling out 6 months prior. I mean, Rhys put it bad. Rhys like, no, do not talk to me, don't want to touch me, I don't want to be around you kind of thing. So there's a lot of boundary working regarding that, which I think definitely makes sense, which is also a thing that David does not like. It's like, gee, he really just gets my nerves every single time. But another thing too is that Rhys is very much really like on the academic side, especially regarding the occult. So he's very much like not just quite knowledgeable, but he's definitely very much interested in like reading about the occult, learning about the occult and linguistics and all the things and all that stuff, which makes him really, really good for like the occult, these occult secret society meetings and stuff. And then Moira, who is his wife, is also an astrologer and also a tarot card reader as well. And also, she's also an empath as well. So, I mean, as y'all can tell, I think this book is just more character-driven than really plot-driven. So if you're here on plot, I mean, the plot's definitely there, but like, the plot, I feel like, is just the driving force for these characters to interact with each other. This is just more character-driven than plot, even though there is a plot. Just to let y'all know. Despite this being more character-driven, there is a plot here. So I'm still invested in seeing more about this curse and stuff, but I'm also kind of just curious as far as like these three characters and seeing like how they're supposed to end up in like a V-shaped polyamorous situation here. Because putting David back in the picture here, I don't know how that's gonna happen. Because we also do get his big three, and honestly, learning about his big three is definitely making sense to his personality, especially if you add to white man privilege with so much generational wealth. It really adds up. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because look, if any of you are interested in his signs, he's literally a double Leo Capricorn moon. Do with that information as you will. But anyways, as far as like the first 100 pages, I'll just say that I do like this. I don't love it. I don't think I'm enjoying this as much as like a Diary of Blood, mostly because, well, of course, the writing style. I mean, when it comes to straightforward writing style, it depends on really the genre and like the kind of story it is. And for the story like this, I would have preferred a little bit more lyrical writing, like an Education and Malice. However, I do prefer the fact we have more plot here than an Education and Malice. And the characters in here are a little bit more interesting than an Education and Malice. So yes, I'm enjoying this more so than an Education and Malice, but not enjoying it enough like I did in A Diary of Blood. But I think that's fine, though. I think that's fine. It also helps to know, too, that this is the first book in a series. So I am curious to see if we can get a little bit more development in regards to, like, more backstory, more focus on, like, recent Moira, especially Moira. Because despite the fact that we have these three perspectives, and of course most of the perspectives are in David's perspective, the other person with also like some mixture about a perspective is like Rhys. Moira has some perspective chapters, but it's not as much or even equal to like Rhys's chapters. It's more so like definitely a David book for sure, but also the second most is like Rhys, and then Moira every now and then. So I don't know, I don't really like that. I prefer more perspective chapters from Moira, but fine, it's fine. She'll have her own book. But yeah, I'm just here to say that I am indeed enjoying my time with this one. I'm very much curious to see how this is going to go with the plot. I do actually really like to talk about the occult and the secret society and stuff. I am very much curious about the amount of research that St. Gibson went into for the occult. I think this is something that they are just genuinely interested in anyways, even with tarot, because the stuff with Moira though that's really interesting for me is definitely the astrology and tarot stuff. I'm like really interested in that. So yeah, right now we're just seeing the characters trying to like really focus on trying to like figure out the origin of like this curse, like who's doing it, like how and why and all the things. So we're trying to figure that out. And also they're also trying to make sure they make peace with each other as well, so they don't feel like they're gonna bite each other's heads off. I mean, with David around, I can see it, okay? Like, I understand it. However, I do understand as well that David clearly has some flaws, but he has some things that I'm sympathetic for. However, he got some work to do. But also, Moira and Reese also have some work to do. Even though they're more likable, they also have their own personal work to do as well. So I'm very much curious to see how this book will end as well. But I think I'm going to update y'all in the next 100 pages or so. Yeah, because I put like a tab here. So I think I'm supposed to update y'all when I get to like page 200. We shall see what happens in the next 100 pages, if any of my thoughts changes or if any more revelations come in as well. But just to let y'all know as well, as far as this vlog, this is going to be, I don't know if I even mentioned in the, I don't even know if I said this even in the intro, but this is a spoiler-free reading vlog. I mean, not because, just because of the fact I have an art copy, and also, if you get the artwork, you get this book early. But this book doesn't really officially come out until May 28th, and even then, it's not like a lot of people are going to read it right away anyways. So, yeah, I'm trying to make this spoiler-free, but I do think I might have a spoiler-filled section towards the end. But of course, tagged, I mean, there's timestamps in the description and also hopefully in the video itself, but I'll try to do something to make sure that y'all know when I'm going to spoilers. But yeah, that's all my current thoughts on Evocation, the first 100 pages. So we shall see what happens in the next 100 pages. I am hoping that I'm hoping for a certain shift in David. There seems to be a little bit of a shift already, but like I want to see that shift blossom even more so. I'll talk to you all when I get to page 200. Salutations, y'all. It is Saturday night. Even though I got to page 200 of this arc, I was reading this book past midnight, so I didn't go to bed until like 6 a.m. And I thought to myself, oh, just sleep, wake up, you'll be able to do an update. Nah, I was too tired to do anything. And then I just slept even more. So I recently woke up like a couple hours ago, and then I just need to break my brain up so I can figure out, okay, what are my thoughts up to this point? And I would say I do have some mixed feelings about this book right now. For one, like I already knew going in. Again, I don't remember if I said this in my first update. I don't remember I don't know what I've been saying. Time has been going on. I've been recording a different vlog, so I don't know what I've been saying for this one, but I do know that I do remember that Saint Gibson did say that this is a lot more straightforward of writing style. And yes, it is indeed straightforward, but I don't feel like it's straightforward in the sense of that it's doing a lot of telling versus showing. Like, there's still enough of it that's showing. I'm glad at least it doesn't feel like a huge telling versus showing thing, so it's very clear that despite this being more straightforward, St. Gibson has a strong grip on their writing, that it doesn't feel like I'm being told so many things to the point that just grates and irritates me that I usually get from debut novels, so that's good at least. However, I am a little bit disappointed because, well, I do know I wasn't going to get the poetic, lyrical Right Into a Diary of Blood. I already read an Education in Malice earlier this year, so I already knew that Evocation was not going to be like a Diary of Blood. That much is very, very certain. However, I was hoping that at least would be a little bit more in the lyrical sense, and there are bits of it that kind of feels a little bit lyrical, but not enough lyrical. I'm always here for, look, I do like pretty flowery writing when I'm in the headspace to really absorb such a writing style. However, I do prefer lyrical writing because in a way that it helps me to be like, oh, really like the words, but also I don't feel like I'm getting lost. You know what I'm saying? So I don't hate this writing style. It's fine. The straightforwardness is fine. It's not my preferred. So it has been making it a little bit difficult for me to be like, do I love this? No. However, I do enjoy this more than An Education in Malice, because I have found that the characters and the plot here is a lot more intriguing than An Education in Malice. Like, I do like that we're following 3 different characters, and despite the fact this is David's book, I am getting perspective chapters of Reese and Moira, because if this entire book was in David's perspective, I will want to just DNF this book, because there is no way I want to be in David's head the entire time. I will be losing it, I'll tell y'all. But thankfully, it is not. Most of it is in his perspective, which is fine. But there has been a point, and there has been a shift for David's character that he's a lot more tolerable, more agreeable, more like I can easily sympathize with him instead of being more genuinely annoyed with him, because I'm starting to understand him more. So I have to say, I am happy that I'm at least enjoying reading from David's perspective, to the point that now I'm even more sympathetic with him. Granted, though, he still has his assholing moments for sure. And also, it is really cool to see too, like, how David is starting to grow more attached to people, because we do learn about, like, his upbringing and that he has experienced child abuse from his father, who was both physically and emotionally abusive to him. So I think that definitely makes sense for how he deals with other people, so I can definitely understand that. And I'm just glad that Reese and Moro, or at least, were willing to help this guy, because any other given day, I can understand for there anyone who comes around David who's like, I don't want to mess with that. Look, it's understandable. Trust me, I don't think I will mess with that either. But for Reese, it makes sense because they were together and he still cares for David. And Moira, she was definitely reluctant on this guy. Trust me, I would be too. But she starts to see that there's something about him that's like, maybe he's not quite the asshole in the sense that he's completely much like hopeless, because like sure she does understand like his traumas and stuff, but still she's not gonna let that slide now, okay? And I've definitely gotten to the point in the story too where I'm starting to see this V shape of this polyamorous possibility. It's not fully set in stone here, but it has gotten to the point where Reese and Mora are at least able to discuss that might be a possibility, that David might be into this relationship, despite the fact they are married. And for Reese, it's like, look, I don't want you to feel like I don't love you enough. But for Moira, she knows that he loves her. I can see that as a reader, that he literally loves Moira. He adores her. He treats her well. But Moira knows that Reese and David, they still got feelings for each other, and I see it too. I mean, I saw it from the beginning, so it don't surprise me at all. So yeah, we'll see how that like goes between each other, because like David and Reese, they still gotta work some stuff out anyway, so I don't think it's officially a V shape just yet. But if this is since this is the first book of the series, I won't be surprised if it's not really official until maybe like a couple more books into it, which will be fine. I think that'll be pretty steady pace for the way that Reese and David broke up, because we do actually get like insight into how they broke up. And yeah, it definitely makes sense. Oh yeah, and I also want to let anyone know that for anyone who is recovering of alcoholism and alcohol addiction as well, there is definitely talks regarding that, since that's part of David's past. And this takes me in as spoiler-y, but like it's a thing that did recently happen, is the fact that David does relapse. So it is indeed on page and stuff, so I do want to put that out there as a warning for any recovering alcoholics, that there is indeed a point when a recovering alcoholic does relapse. So just to put that out there for people to know ahead of time. All this to say that I am indeed enjoying this way more than An Education in Malice. I do prefer the characters here more so. However, again, since this is David's book, I do feel like there's enough of Reese and Moira that like I don't feel like they're completely flat, but they're not the most fully fleshed out kind of characters I would hope they would be. Granted though, this is a 4-book series. They will have their own books, so they will also have their time to shine. It's just that that's not really how I would like a series to go. I would prefer that all of the characters are like fully fleshed out in one book, and we continue to flesh them out even more and more and expand upon them books from further on. Not like, oh, this is a particular character's book, so they have the most focus, then the next book is another character, the next book, and the next book. I don't really like that kind of series setup. It's not my preferred at all. But since this is indeed a fantasy romance, like an urban fantasy romance series, I guess that would make some sense. But again, not my preferred. There's just things in this book that like they're not my preferred way, but like Gibson is doing it in a way that's at least good. Like it's a good version of the things that aren't really my preferred. So like I can't really be upset about the fact that it's not doing that this book is not the way I would have preferred as a reader, but it's doing a good job. So this will be good for certain readers versus other readers, but it's doing a good job. So I'm happy about that. My only main critique right now is really the plot. Like there is a plot, but I feel like the plot is such a back burner kind of thing right now, and I don't really like that at all. Like, we're really trying to figure out this family curse thing regarding David, that he's having like this, he's experiencing this spiritual sickness to the point he's blacking out, and it's really, really bad. But I don't like the fact of like how we're getting that information is so slow going. I'm just like, I want more of the plot here, so that's really what I'm really having some struggle with right now, is really the plot. Like, the characters at least are interesting enough for me to keep going, but the plot is definitely holding it back, which is unfortunate, but at least the plot is going. It's just a lot slower. But all this to say that I'm indeed enjoying my time with this one. Not as much as A Diary of Blood, but more than Education in Malice. So that's something for you. I didn't really expect myself to really enjoy this more than Education in Malice, but I'm glad I am. And maybe it's because of the fact that we're doing like the occult and we have tarot, astrology, palmares, like all that stuff in here. So I don't know, that's more of a topic I'm more interested in, I guess. So yeah, that's all my thoughts on Evocation right now, since we're about 2/3 of the way through. So by the time I come back to this vlog, I'm gonna be done with this book basically, and then give y'all my full-on thoughts and review. That will be pretty much it. So yeah, I will update y'all when I actually finish reading Evocation. Salutations, y'all. It is Monday, and I have finished reading Evocation by S.T. Gibson. Actually, I finished this yesterday, but I was doing some other things. But I also needed to really sit down and really think my thoughts on Evocation, because I was really... I have mixed feelings about this book. It's not a bad book, but it's definitely not what I expected, but I feel like it has it's leaned towards in ways that I definitely enjoy more than I feel like some readers who've read this. So all of this to say is that I definitely like this. As far as this being like a setup book, you know, like the first book in a series, I found it to be a little bit... I find it to be kind of a little irritating, honestly, thinking of that this is the first book in a series. I'm like, like, I can see how it could possibly, this book could be expanded upon into a series. However, I also feel like there's not enough setup to really sustain it. I don't know, something about this being the first book in a quartet, especially, is like a little bit long. I mean, maybe the plot will change from book to book when we following the rest of these characters, but I don't know, y'all. I don't really know. So the ending here really made me go, what? Because for a while I was thinking like maybe this could be like a 3.5, and then I got to the end and I'm like, nope, this is a 3. It's very disappointing how I just really thought this was gonna be a lot better than I thought. So y'all, let me just get into our review, because I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about writing. I knew going in that this was a lot more straightforward writing style, and depending on the story, the straightforward writing style can work for me. It has worked for me before, whether I read it physically, whether I read with my eyeballs or I listen with my ears. Straightforward writing styles can work. However, I do feel like this straightforward of a writing style has kind of worked, but also didn't at the same time. Sometimes I feel like it could be a little bit repetitive on like how straightforward it is, and regarding like especially the emotional beats between characters. It's definitely not so much, it's not so straightforward in the sense that I feel like it's telling versus showing kind of problem, but I do find it a little bit grating. I'm like, I don't know, I wanted to be a little more lyrical, and it has its moments, but like for the most part it was just too straightforward, and it was getting a little bit grating, especially towards the end, honestly. So writing was not the best thing. And then pacing, again, like I think I said this before, this is very much more character driven. There is a plot, but it's more in the back burner because we're really just focusing on these characters and their relationships. So the actual plot of finding out about this like family curse from David's family curse, that kind of it's part of the character's motivations for them being around each other, but I also feel like the actual progression of finding more about this curse is very slow going, which really made it hard for me to be more invested with this plot, and made me think of myself, how is this going to be expanded upon into a series? Because like as an avid fantasy reader, especially if you say this is the first book in a series, I'm trying to think like, okay, so what about this do we need to expand upon into more books? Plot-wise, I don't think there's really much more, but you know, things could happen, things could be added on to the plot for who knows what. But I do think the only thing right now that really I see does need more expanding upon is probably the character relationships, because this is David's book. So if you're gonna be reading this, you gotta be okay with trying to go through the head of a very rich, privileged white man who is such a freaking prick a lot of times. So that's really irritating to read through. However, St. Gibson I was able to feel sympathetic towards David, even when he's such an asshole a lot of times, but I was able to at least sympathize with him. Like, not just because of like the trauma and stuff, but there was like at least nuance with his backstory and like how he acts and how he interacts with other people. And the only things though that I feel like I really wish there was more of was between like Reese and Moira. Moira, though, she is still my favorite character out of the three of them. However, I don't think she's like a fully realized character, and neither is Reese. But I do think it's probably because of the fact that based on how this series is set up, I think I've said this before, is that we're individually having character focused books, so there's enough of them to be at least somewhat of a character, but they're not fully realized because we haven't gone into their books yet, and which is really irritating. I don't really like that. I don't like how some authors will want a series like that. I don't like that. I'd rather that we get bits and pieces of like a plot, but the characters are still fully realized and they're still growing, versus like, oh, we focus on one character here, another character here, another character here. Sometimes that might work, I don't know, but I don't think this really worked with this one here. It's just really irritating. I don't really like that as a way to pace your fantasy series. So at least it's giving me at least some hope and something to look forward to with their other books, is that since I think Reese is gonna be the next person we're going to focus on the next book. So if that is the case, I am glad for that, because honestly, I really liked Moira, and I still grew to love David. I mean, not really loved. I grew to at least tolerate David more so, and at least feel invested in him and his story and stuff. Reese, though, I didn't know where to put with Reese. On one hand, I kind of relate to him, especially since he's very much anxiety. He's a very anxious person. He really loves Moira. He adores Moira, but he also has some feelings with David that he's reluctant with, especially since he's Catholic too. So like when he's getting these feelings for both Moira and David at the same time, it was a lot. He had to do with some Catholic guilt, which hopefully maybe in his book we go through all that Catholic guilt, because bruh, you need to work through all that. But then on the other hand, I'm kind of like I'm reading this book and saying like, oh, he's very much ambitious. He'll go for what he wants. And I'm like, I can kind of see it, but I also cannot see it at the same time, which is odd, despite this is a very straightforward writing style. I'm like, I don't know if I really see the ambition from him, even in his perspective chapters. So I don't know how to feel about that, honestly. So hopefully in his book, which I think is the sequel to Evocation, we'll get more with Reese and more like his own particular headspace and stuff. Oh yeah, so world building. So this is urban fantasy romance, and I will just say that I am pretty disappointed on the urban fantasy part. Now granted, I think I was spoiled with the Greenbone saga in regards to urban fantasy. So anything that's like, anyone says like, oh, urban fantasy, I'm just thinking like so deeply rooted into like the city and the politics and the people, the interpersonal, like I'm thinking like Jade City, like the Greenbone saga level of urban fantasy. So when I'm reading this, I'm like, I'm pretty disappointed, because I know this is set in Boston, but like I don't feel like we are in Boston. I'm told we're in Boston, which is fine. I've never been to Boston, just to let y'all know. I've never been, but like I don't feel like we're in Boston. I don't know how to describe it. I don't feel like this particular world is as lived in, which is also one of the reasons why I always be hesitant. I tend to be hesitant with urban, even contemporary fantasies. I feel like I don't feel immersed into that world. I don't know if I'm making sense here. The point is, I did not feel like we were in Boston, despite the fact I was told multiple times, like I've been told that we were in Boston, but like in my mind, I'm not thinking Boston. I'm just thinking like just a city. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. We're here, we're there, we're in a city, I guess. Like, I don't know, it doesn't feel that deep to me. And then speaking with the occult, I definitely find like the stuff regarding the secret society stuff to be kind of interesting, but I also feel like not as interesting at the same time. Like I was really more interested with Moira because, well, not just with her personality and the kind of person she is, but also the fact that she's into astrology. She does tarot card readings and stuff. She is an intuitive / psychic, kind of like David. They even have like a psychic kind of connection between the two of them, which is very, very cool, honestly. That was really, really interesting to see between the two of them. Point is that this was just a mixed bag, okay, y'all? This was a very much a mixed bag of a book that I'm still trying to gather my thoughts into what about this doesn't really work for me, but yet also kind of like works for me at the same time. Like the idea of the occult, the tarot card stuff, the astrology stuff, all the stuff, and also these interpersonal relationships between like Reese and Moira and David. Reese and David, okay, those two, we need some work. Those two need work, but also because of the fact I really think we need more with regarding Reese, and also we do get more insight. I can't remember if I said this already, but I do remember we do get some more insight as far as why those two broke up, and I think it makes sense. They were definitely not a healthy relationship, and even when David's trying to like ask Reese for help and stuff, he is definitely pushing on regarding boundaries, which is what Reese is trying to uphold from David. Like, hey, bruh, I'm trying to help you. Like, I get it, but like boundaries, okay? So yeah, that's I don't know. As far as this being a first book in a series, I feel like plot-wise, there's not much to really expand upon here, except for just the characters, which is what will make me continue to pick up more of the books from the series, is really regarding the characters and their own personal relationships with each other. That's pretty much it. As far as the plot itself, I I can live without. And the characters aren't fully fleshed or deep enough for me to be super excited to pick up the next book, unfortunately, which is very much unfortunate. But I'm still looking forward to, though, reading more of this series, because I don't think S.T. Gibson has written any other series, so I'm kind of curious to see on how they will write an actual direct sequel, since, like, with A Diary of Blood and Education of Malice, they're companion novels, they're set in the same world, but you don't really need to read them in order or anything like that. This would, I think, be the first time I'm really seeing, like, S.T. Gibson really writing a proper series, so I am pretty curious about that. But all in all, I think I'm giving this book a solid 3. I think it's good. It's just that there's a lot of moving pieces. There's some pieces in here that I'm just like, I'm not totally sure where we're really going with this. I don't know if this is a solid foundation just yet. It depends on where we're really going. But I think right now there's enough in here for me to be invested. But plot progression wise, definitely left to be desired. This is very much a character-driven story, character-driven series. So if you do want to pick up this book, so actually, hold up. Let me show y'all the finished copy for this. So, what kind of reader do you have to be to read Evocation? I don't know. Because if you were, I'm going to say this. If you were a fan of A Diary of Blood, especially if a portion of that love for that book in particular was the writing style, you will be thoroughly disappointed with Evocation, because the writing style is not the same. I do feel like S.T. Gibson really wanted to write something different, and she did accomplish that. The question is this the kind of different for you? I don't know. Are you interested in the occult? Are you interested in a character-driven story? Are you interested in, especially in this book in particular, following a very, very annoying asshole rich white boy character? Do you want to follow that for most of the time? You do get perspectives of Reese and Moira too, but for the most part, this is David's book. This is entirely David's book. So a lot of his problems, a lot of his baggage is going to be dragging through with this book, including with guarding the plot. Because honestly, I think the plot probably would have progressed a little bit more if David wasn't such a hard ass. But we're here, so you gotta know that going in. 2. So since this is pretty much based on, like, especially if you are an avid fantasy reader, this is pretty much based on characters. So whoever's book this is was probably going to be the most fully realized character here. Everyone else is at least sufficient enough, but not fully realized, in my personal opinion. And this is urban fantasy romance. Let's see. And as far as sexual content, there's only, I think, really, I mean, there's definitely mentions of, like, sexual activity, but as far as actual sex scenes, I think it's only, like, 1 graphic sex scene. Yeah, but I have seen people love this. I've seen people really enjoy this, but I have seen people, more people being more disappointed with this. So it's kind of hard for me to really say, like, who would love this, like, this be a new favorite. I don't really know. Like, if you've read A Diary of Blood first, I think you would be disappointed with Evocation. But if you've never read anything by S.T. Gibson, I mean, I think you could start with Evocation first, at least, as like a basis for, like, her writing style if you want, and the way that she writes characters, because every one of her books is really just character driven. I mean, A Diary of Blood was character driven, and Education of Malice was character driven. A Diary of Blood worked more for me because of the writing style. And Education of Malice, I also had similar problems with the writing, but, like, not like similar problems with writing, no, because an Education of Malice was lyrical. I had problems with plot as well. I think yeah, it's in my winter reading vlog. I'll link it down below. And if you do actually get a finished copy, at least in this, my particular Aardvark book club copy anyways, it does say the names of, like, the titles of the rest of this series. So, yeah. So the back here, it says that in Reese's story, his book is going to be called Ascension, which I think definitely makes sense that it will be book number 2 for this series. And then Moira is next with Divination. And then, I'm not going to say who this character's name is or even their book, but it is a character you do find here in Evocation. But I haven't gotten much of her character to really say that, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense for why this particular person will be focusing on the 4th and final book in this series. Because honestly, I don't know much about her, except for just the little things we do get in here. But I do see that potentially the next 2 books with Reese and Moira, we will get more of this particular character. So when the sequels come out, I'll tell you what that book is. But right now, I'm gonna keep it under wraps. But yes, all in all, is to say that this is a 3-star, unfortunately. I was really hoping for this to be maybe 3.5, maybe 3.75, but yeah, this was a 3-star. I was enjoying it for a time, but the ending really made me go, seriously? Like seriously, this is how we're gonna, okay, whatever. So, yeah, that's all my thoughts on Evocation. I was a little bit disappointed, but you know what? It's fine. I'm still looking forward to the rest of the series. And I'm actually pretty looking forward to Odd Spirits. I know this is gonna be re-released, and it comes out in October, actually. I don't know much about the actual plot of it, but I do know that it was originally like a short novella, but now it's gonna be rewritten and also expanded upon so that it fits into this series as well. And I've also heard that it's gonna have some pretty substantial changes from the original to now, especially regarding the biphobia. So I really do appreciate that Saint was very much upfront with the fact that they have written something pretty problematic and they want to rewrite that. So I appreciate the honesty there. So at least I'll be looking forward to reading Odd Spirits, because I don't know, I think there'll be something interesting here, because again, I am curious about this series. I was pretty excited about it, but I'm curious to see where this goes. We shall see. I'll still read more from St. Gibson. It's just that, am I gonna be expecting 5 stars from them? Honestly, no. Maybe one of their books will be a 5-star for me. Maybe not. I don't know. So far, Diary of Blood is winning like a 4.5, so we shall see. But anyways, yeah, y'all, that's pretty much it. That's all my thoughts on Evocation. Y'all let me know in the comments. Will y'all be reading this book? Have you read this book if you've got like an advanced copy? What were y'all thoughts? Of course, keep it spoiler free, please, for the peoples. I just want to know what y'all think about Evocation. Regarding my thoughts, if any of y'all have read an advanced copy, or if you're watching this after the book has released already, and if you have time to read it, y'all let me know. I'm just curious about hearing anyone's thoughts about Evocation, especially if you give it 5 stars. I really want to know why you give it 5 stars, personally. Just for me personally, I just want to know. Now, if you made it this far into the video, y'all leave me a crystal ball emoji and like a card emoji in honor of, you know, the medium crystal ball thing, tarot card stuff. Anyways, thank you all again for coming on to this reading vlog. I have no idea how long this is, but thank you all for making it this far anyways. Like this video if you like it, subscribe if y'all want to, and I hope to see you on my next video. Bye.